of the best top expert tips and hacks to make your life better. LifeHakx. Technology, business, multimedia, wellness and health, events, reviews, and more. This is Mary Collins from LifeHakx Media, and I have the pleasure of having Scott Steinberg online with us today. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing great. About yourself?
I'm working from home, so always an interesting topic. Anyway, I'm just going to tell our audience a little bit about you. Scott Steinberg is the head of a consulting firm, Future Proof Strategies, and currently a top-rated keynote speaker, successful author, and futurist. He provides presentations and training workshops at events, meetings, and conferences. Scott is the best-selling author of 17 books, including Make Change Work for You, Fast Forward, and Cybersecurity, the Expert Guide. He's also among today's most quoted industry experts and has been seen by over 1 billion people worldwide. Wow, Scott, this is really such a pleasure. And has been featured as a guest on mainstream media such as ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, ESPN, and MTV, Rolling Stone, and the Huffington Post. So, Scott, it is more than an honor to have you on the show, and I'm super excited to talk about some of your books, especially your new release. But first of all, I would like to tell the audience how you became a public keynote speaker.
Sure. Like everybody else, kind of a roundabout route. I started writing for different magazines and newspapers, was the change and innovation guy covering technology and video games for outlets like CNN and Rolling Stone, and then started to make news media appearances and self-publish, that is, our own books. Did about 100,000 of them independently, and people started calling on us for advice and tips. And then I realized that organizations could benefit from that type of insight. A lot of people out there hungry for information, as you pointed out here on the show, life hacks or even business hacks as well. And so really got the opportunity to get some invitations to stand up, say a few things, and honored to still be doing it today.
Wonderful. And so tell us, what are some of the top hacks or tips for being a successful public speaker?
Well, let's start with the fact that you don't necessarily need to have formal training or any given background in order to master the field. In fact, actually, when it comes to public speaking, you may find it amusing to know that the way I learned was that I was very shy in my teens when it came to meeting new people. And of course, at some point wanted to pursue dating. So I read a magazine article that said, hey, by the way, if you want to get good at learning how to speak, practice walking up to strangers and talking to them for 2 minutes about anything, just one a day. And lo and behold, by the time I was done, not only was I able to walk up into a bar and speak to anybody about anything, but I actually could have an entire conversation with myself in the mirror for about 30 minutes if you really needed to do it. So what I'm saying is just practice, practice, practice. Don't assume that there's any formal training or background necessary. In fact, the best thing that you can do if you want to speak is to continue having conversations and to also think about when you're putting a presentation together, how do you summarize things in quick little 15-minute chunks? It's about all the human brain can process. So you really, in a 45-minute speech, if you want to go that long, will make only about 3 key points. So you practice, you write, you put it down on paper, you codify your thoughts, you make it very clear in about 20 to 30 seconds what the message is you want to have to get across. And then everything else that you build around it is just stories, anecdotes, little mental shorthand that you can create that help get complex concepts across quite quickly. But again, just do it.
Wow. Well, that's an inspiration. So just first hacks, just have some Dutch courage, as they would say.
That's about right. And actually, that's one of the interesting things. When we did that book, Make Change Work for You, ostensibly on its surface, it's all about how to innovate and adapt to whatever the future brings. But you realize very quickly that people are quite resilient. They're quite clever. And actually, if you were to look at change and disruption that we're dealing with, we're probably all dealing with it on a daily basis. I'm guessing your schedule today probably doesn't look much the same as it was yesterday. Oftentimes we're dealing with disruptions minute by minute.
Absolutely.
So if everybody is capable of innovating, it's what I realized was that the reason that some people get ahead while others seem to not, at least temporarily, is that they're just more courageous. They're willing to put themselves out there more, to try, to fail, to get back up, pull themselves back up. And make things happen. So sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, but the big thing to keep in mind is you just got to keep pushing forward, and it's all about being more resilient.
Right. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's right, although it definitely hurts in the moment. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is like people, so you probably know this doing hypnotherapy and other things, but people, when they have a negative experience, tend to create a trigger that's assigned to it, a negative feeling. And when they encounter that experience again, say you go try and speak publicly, it doesn't go well, you're more reticent to try it again. However, the problem is, if you think about it, you put up enough of these roadblocks and barriers, because we all try and shy away from things that scare us or things that maybe cause us pain, then you're going to box yourself in. And really, the best thing that you can do, a simple hack here, is if you've tried something, haven't succeeded at before, is just to keep trying and maybe take baby steps. The idea being that you want to assign positive triggers to that type of experience as well. So again, to go back to that analogy, if you had a bad time at a speaking event, well, guess what? Revise your talk, learn from what you found out, adapt your material, go back and present again. You may find you have a good experience, and actually it's capable of canceling out some of those fears and getting rid of some of those roadblocks that you may otherwise encounter.
Oh, wonderful advice. I think we definitely would love to have you as a contributor on our business and hack section, because you really know your stuff. And speaking of which, I mean, you're an author of 17 books. First of all, what inspired you? How did you get into it? And secondly, how do you find the time?
Well, the funny part is I tend to write about what interests me. And usually what interests me at the time is something that just annoys me or pisses me off. So you kind of see something out there in the world and you say, well, why isn't it done this way? Why couldn't it be done better? Do we really need to do in 17 steps what could be done in 3? So I just tend to research it. I find out more about it. Could be parenting, could be thinking about how do you adapt to digital transformation. It's just any given subject, and you see a pressing need or something that's maybe not happening the way you think it should be done. And so you got to do the research in your day-to-day work or your life anyways. So I just made a point to commit it to paper. And that's another fun little life hack, by the way. There are so many apps now that will take commentary that you dictate into your phone and actually allow you to transform that material into a book, that I often say one of the best life hacks you can use is just to hop on the treadmill in the morning, start rattling off your thoughts into an app like otter.ai. And by the way, it'll transcribe it for you. And by the time you've done that all week long, you've got enough for a chapter of a book.
Wow.
So the reality is that's kind of how you find time for it. The other secret being that I wake up ridiculously early in the morning. And that's when you're free from distractions.
Yes. No, I know what you mean. Some of us are night owls, and then and the worst thing is, of course, I guess that in itself could be a little bit of my own opinion lesson, is that if you have a brilliant idea, do write it down or dictate it as quickly as possible, because more than likely you'll forget it after a few hours. At least that's my problem.
That's right. And actually the thing that I tell everybody is if you can hold a conversation, you can write a book, right? So the more you can get it down on paper, the more you can sort of see, am I making sense? Am I presenting this clearly? Could I tighten it up a little bit? But the key is just, I don't want to say vomit up things on paper, but get as much down on paper as you can. And then you can begin to tighten up some screws. And by the time you're done, I think you'll find that you're actually able to be far more productive than you would suspect. And even if you don't consider yourself an experienced author, again, if you're able to chat, if you're able to present your ideas clearly, which all of us have to do at work any given day, well, guess what? You're going to be able to make a cogent argument. And actually, you're going to be able to be a published author quite faster than you think. And by the way, just in case you're wondering, less than $100, tons of online services and apps will let you publish on demand. You can do it in less than 24 hours.
Wow. I mean, that actually sounds like a title for a whole new book for you, unless you've already got one about how to become published.
Why work harder when you can work smarter and live better? Life hacks.
Well, the funny thing is, actually, if you look and fast forward, you'll find some of these tips and tricks. That whole book is about simple tweaks that you can make or shifts in strategy that can vault you far ahead and accelerate growth and success. And by the way, another fun one that I often like to remind people of is if you want to get a book under the Kindle, all those thoughts that you've been speaking out loud and dictating into the apps that are getting transcribed, you just have to email a Word doc to an email address and it'll convert it into Kindle. And then you can go on a site like Fiverr and buy a cover for $5 or $10, put them together, and bada boom, bada bing, you're up and running in a matter of minutes.
Wow. Now, I mean, definitely going to have to do a blog about this and put these points down on in writing so that people can take their people like me that process things super slowly can take their time and really go through what you're saying. I mean, this is brilliant. And speaking of brilliant ideas, explain to us simpletons, what is a futurist?
Someone with very good marketing who's an analyst or a researcher. But honestly, a futurist is I guess, common parlance for a trend forecaster. But again, we're all doing this day in and day out of our lives. If you think about it, right? When we get married, we think it's going to last a lifetime. When we make an investment, we think it's going to pay off in the long run. Sometimes it works out, not always. But of course, when that happens, when things go awry, we have to, of course, adjust our strategies as well. And by the way, we're all doing it. So a futurist, again, is just kind of a name, a fancy name for somebody who's a researcher and analyst, but mostly it's someone who asks the question, what if, more frequently, who challenges those assumptions a little bit sooner and thinks through all the possibilities and ways that any given decision can go, and then continually revises and makes updated decisions. But from a business standpoint, what happens is I look at trends that are emerging in society, economic trends that are emerging as well. I think about where the future might go. And then what I do is I present these trends to organizations and I present them with challenges that they need to think about if the future goes in different directions so they can plan strategy accordingly. But it really is just thinking about what's coming next and planning for it a little bit more rapidly here and now.
Okay. So what would your top hacks be for predicting a particular business idea or predicting a potential business plan or moving forward with something?
Sure. Well, it's not super hard. And if you want to do it on a day-to-day basis, sometimes it's as easy as just tuning into news outlets, setting Google alerts for recurring themes and trends, looking at academic research, looking at all the latest findings from the startup community, seeing themes that are recurring over and over again. That's going to give you an idea that something's on the rise in terms of popularity. And then you can start to think about what's happening in the marketplace and the many different directions that it might go. And by the way, it also helps to build a big personal network. So you're not going to be able to predict the future accurately 100% all the time yourself. But if you surround yourselves with lots of smart people or people who have lots of creative and diverse backgrounds, what you're going to find is they're going to help put topics on your radar that you can follow. And the big thing to keep in mind is just to keep your eye on the big picture, right? So sometimes we have trends versus fads that we kind of get caught up in. And you want to avoid fads, right? Fads are what's happening on the surface of the marketplace. So, for example, the fact that Taylor Swift sales are going down, she's still hitting 1 million on the sales charts, but it's a fraction of what she used to do, maybe concerning for a fan like me. However, what I want you focused on more is the big picture, these forces that are happening beneath the surface that are causing those sales to dip. For example, the fact that people are switching to more online or streaming services, or that their content consumption habits have changed and they really only have 3 minutes to listen to a single and they don't want to go buy and listen to an entire album.
Okay. Right. So it might not be her. It might just be the style and way of using things. And speaking of being very predictive, you have just recently, you released a book called Cyber Security, which really fascinates me because I'm uber paranoid. I don't know if you've looked at my Facebook lately, but I've been trying to get off of it. And it's like, can't even get off the doggone thing, Tell us a bit more about this. How did you get into cybersecurity as the expert guide?
Sure. So I've always been in the technology field, helping organizations stay ahead of the curve. Wound up doing a lot of cybersecurity work lately for banks and large organizations because it's actually today's fastest growing form of criminal activity. Happens about every 39 seconds. The crazy part being that less than 3/4 of organizations actually have a plan in place to deal with it. And by the way, the trouble with cybersecurity is that it's an arms race that's happening out there between hackers and law enforcement and intercompany professionals. And the problem is that hackers, they're going to work nights and weekends. Your security team is actually going to take time off to be with the family. So, and this is all happening, by the way, while organizations are undergoing digital transformation, which we also help with in the strategy there. And there's more points of attack. And if you think about it, digital attackers can fire about 10,000 arrows at you any given second, only one of which ever has to breach your defenses in order to make an impact. And so it's a major source of concern for our clients and other Fortune 500 companies, a major concern for individuals. And the wildest part is you have to assume that you will be hacked. You probably, in fact, have already been hacked, all those data breaches and leaks. It's just a question of, have hackers gotten around to finding your info in the millions of other records that they're playing with?
Right, right. I mean, and all the computers that we throw away, all the phones that end up in these not even landfills, they just end up like in piles in Africa and India and places like this. And actually, one of my favorite interviews is with Jim Browning, who checks out, he like turns the camera back on the scammers in these call centers. And it's insane because they go through your stuff. They can open up your camera. They can have a good look through all your photos. And these are for scammers. But now we're faced with this whole industry of the people we trusted, like Facebook, to now just blatantly like, well, now we're going to go ahead and sell all your stuff, and we're going to go ahead and connect your credit card and check everything out. And it's insane. And speaking of not just regular people, but these big companies, and I won't say names because I'll get into trouble, but Switzerland is a big has a big pharmaceutical industry, and they have their own cybersecurity. However, I found out a very interesting thing the other day that at least one of the pharmaceutical companies that I know lets their staff use WhatsApp. And as a matter of fact, they communicate through WhatsApp. So I'm thinking, right? I'm thinking you can have all the cybersecurity in the world for your company. If you're using Google and you're using WhatsApp, game over, really. I mean, I don't know anything about cybersecurity, but I cannot wait to read all about it. So now let's fast forward, to your new book, Fast Forward. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Like I was saying earlier, it's all about how to jumpstart success and achieve all your goals faster and do things in less time. So I think what people make the mistake about is they assume, hey, I'm not qualified, or I don't know where the hell to begin, when in fact these days you must actually flip it on its head and assume that technology, online freelance marketplaces, all these handy apps and pay-as-you-go cloud services, they've actually made it possible now for you to accomplish and achieve anything in a matter of seconds, and you can probably do it faster and cheaper than ever. In fact, if you needed even advanced artificial intelligence routines, well, guess what? There's marketplaces for those. So you don't need to have any coding experience. You don't need to have any technical or work experience. Again, just about anything is within your reach. Barriers to market entry are lower than ever. The key is just to start. The irony being that one of the biggest life hacks is to realize that the first step is the hardest. Steps 2 to 20, no problem once you've gone down the road. But don't psych yourself out, right? If you flip that on its head and you assume that, oh, well, guess what? I'm not the only one to have this problem. Somebody else has solved it, and there's a cheap or easy solution that I can use. Well, guess what? You'll probably be a lot likelier to start. You'll probably get it done a lot faster. So, set some goals, start achieving them, tick them off your list, and go for the path of least resistance. It's one thing to have a...
Yeah, sorry, go on. No, I was going to say, would that be one of your top hacks is in business? Like, one of the first mistakes you can make, like you said, is second guessing yourself or kind of giving up before you've really checked all the alternative options to fix the problem.
That's right. Doesn't matter if you want to publish a book, a newspaper. Doesn't matter if you want to create art or photography. Just about anything that you can put out there into the world or start a business. I mean, you could do it in a matter of days if you need to. And you can do it very quickly, very cost affordably. And that's the other thing, is prototype that stuff. You don't have to go all in overnight. There's this myth that you sort of have to commit, right? And there's this, we idealize this hustle culture. And it's like, well, no, try little tests, do things on the side, nights and weekends, try a side hustle, see what happens, and then grow and scale based on the feedback you get. But the main thing is actually just to start and do something.
Why work harder when you can work smarter and live better? LifeHakx.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go, people. For finding out more information about your business's sales career, starting, publishing company, getting published, doing whatever it is, you just need to have the savvy, really, to start with. And if you want to make it easier, because that's what LifeHakx is all about. It's not about cutting corners, but it is about doing things easier by knowing where to go, how to research, and get the information. Start with Scott Steinberg's wonderful collection of books. So, Scott, if people would like to book you as a keynote speaker or check out all of your different books, etc., where would you say is the best place to start?
Sure. A fine place is our website. It's futurists, plural, speakers, plural.com. So futuristspeakers.com. And all sorts of free tips and tricks can be found there. You can also visit bizdevassociation.com if you want to pick up some of our guides that are free to enjoy, like Think Like a Futurist. Hopefully we'll have all sorts of handy tips.
Okay, and of course on lifehakx.com, that's with a K and an X, we will be putting up Scott's information and all of his contact details and websites. And you were saying something about having a little offer at the minute for our LifeHakx listeners. What will they be expecting when they go onto the blog?
Yeah, basically, if membership for the moment, while things are kind of hairy out there with the pandemic, is free at bizdevassociation.com. It's the International Association for Business Development. You can get some free books, some free guides, all sorts of articles and info sheets that will help you whether you're looking to make a change in life or business.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Scott. And we really hope to have you on LifeHakx more often with some of your fantastic and very, very expert blogs about how to be really good at business or anything that you put your mind to. Thank you so much, Scott. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure as well, Mary. Thanks again for having me on.
The best top expert tips and hacks to make your life better. LifeHakx. Technology, business, multimedia, wellness and health, events, reviews, and more. LifeHakx. Every Sunday at 7 p.m. LifeHakx. LifeHakx.com. That's with a K and an X on Radio X.